Yo guys, I'm Nick from the Produce School and welcome back to a brand new video. In this video I will dive into Serum Future House sound design. I will go over some tactics and tips and tricks and some basic theory on basses, leads and plugs for your future bounce and house tracks. If you want to check out our future house and bounce bundle Futuristic, make sure to head over to the link in the description, and without further ado, let's dive straight into the video. So as you can see, I already loaded up a Serum just on the init default patch. The first thing I'm going to create is a lead. So there are two types that are mainly used in Future House and Bounce. The first type of lead is a brassy kind of saw lead, and you have the super saw lead, which I'm both going to discuss in this video. First of all, we can start with the brassy kind of lead. What I will do in this video is I will try to create the basic principles of how you can form this sound, and after that how you can get a bit unique with them. The brassy kind of sounds are basically all of the time saw waves with a filter on it, and the sounds itself are really easy. First of all, you can shape your envelope one something like this. Make sure you give it some attack. It's really important if you want to achieve the brassy sound. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply the filter to it. Click on this button to turn on the filter, and on these knobs you can choose between different types of filter. Most of the time I would just stick to the MG Low 12 filter, or I would go to the MG Low 18 filter. It just depends a bit on what sound you want to go for. After that, we can drag down the cutoff all the way down and link envelope 1 to it. If you now play the sound, you will already hear the texture of the sound is a bit like some leads you hear in Future House and Bounce. You can also choose to make the lead longer, or you can choose to make the sound a bit shorter. So if you make it short, you can really go for the Zonderling kind of lead, and if you make it longer, sounds a bit more like the old retro visions. Another thing you can do to change up the sound is add voices of unison and detuning to your sound. For example, if I give this sound 8 voices of unison and I keep the detune on this level, it sounds like this. But I can also choose to reduce the detune afterwards. And that totally changes the vibe of the sound. In this case, I will go for the slightly less detuned sound, which sounds like this. If you want, you can add a second oscillator to be a bit more original, but I would just recommend playing around with it. Just try out different wavetables, link them through the filter or not link them through the filter. You can also try to link envelope 1 to the level of the sound or to some other knobs, just to be a bit more unique. So the next thing we can do is add a noise. So I would go with the bright white noise, as it's almost always works. So what you can do is you can either link envelope 1 to the noise itself and drag it down a bit, which will sound like this. Sounds pretty nice, sounds pretty crispy, but there's also another approach to this. If you want the noise to go really fast, you can add an LFO to it, just in a standard shape. Put the rate to like 132, and after that link that to the noise level. You can play around with this technique. It's really simple, but it's just a simple approach to your lead. Another LFO to detune the sound a bit more on the Phi tune. Right, then we can move on to the effects section, and if you want the real big epic sound, you can use a diode distortion, for example. You can hear the lead sounds really big then. But you can also go for a simple tube distortion. Keep the sound very minimal. You can also add some reverb and delay to it. So that's basically how you make the brassy kind of future house. Really simple, but really effective, which is proven a lot of times already. Then the super saw. It's really simple, so I won't make it too long. Basically the only thing you need is the default saw as well. Give it a bit of release, a bit of noise. The noise is really important. This really changes the sound already into a Mike Williams kind of sound. Together with the release, of course you're not there already, but it sounds pretty close already. If you want to add a filter, you can be creative with it. For example, take the high 12 filter, which can really clean up your sound actually. After that, add some dimension to make the sound bigger. You really want your super saws to sound really big. You can eventually add some compression with the multiband mode set on. But in this case, I wouldn't go for that. It's a bit too squashed then. A bit of tube distortion, you can also do that. This is basically it for the super saw. It's really simple. I think many of you already know how to make sound like this, so I won't tell you too much about this. The sounds of Future House are very simple, so if you are a beginner and you want to learn some Future House sound design, it's really doable compared to some of the harder bass house sounds and stuff like that. You don't really need crazy FM modulation and stuff like that. Well, on some of the basses you do, but most of the time it's pretty simple. For the bass, I will go over a existing preset from our pack. The reason that I do this is because I feel like this bass is really good. So if I go over this, you will get a really clear view on how basses like this are made. First, I will go over the Brooks type of bass. As you can directly see, the wavetables we're using are a lot different than the usual saw ones. Most of these wavetables can be found under the digital or spectral section in Xverse Serum. In this case, we went for the Evil Sweep and the Monster 4, both turned down 2 octaves. On the first oscillator, we put 5 voices of unison and we turned down the detune. The reason why we did this is because we wanted the mids of this bass to be a bit more wide. You always hear that the Brooks basses, they sound very huge and even a bit wide. Envelope 1 is shaped like this and linked to the envelope Then another really important thing that really shapes the sound is FM modulating. So what you're basically doing is you're taking oscillator B, which is the Monster 4 wavetable, and you're using that to put FM modulation on FL sweep. I'd say that you don't really need the complex theory about this. You can just play around with it, and then you will see what this does to a sound. Most of the times, this is used to create really gritty sounds, which in this case we are doing too. So envelope 1 is linked to a filter as well, which cuts out some of the high frequencies in some parts of the bass. Then we have this noise, which is put on direct output, so it won't get affected by the effects we put on this bass later on. We also have a sub bass, which is put down 1 octave, and envelope 1 is linked to that. We did that because oscillator A and B didn't really give us enough sub response, so we needed some more sub frequencies to the sound. If you feel like you're making something in Serum and there is bass lacking, a lot of the times this can be just fixed by adding a simple. If you want to keep the sub very clear and just keep it a real pure sine, you can click on direct out, but in this case we decided to let it go through the processing in Serum, which makes it a bit more distorted. Another important part is this envelope 3, which is really short. As you can see right here, it's not linked to anything, but if we go to the matrix, we can search for envelope 3 right here, which is our source, and it's linked to the destination master tune. The master tune is basically the master pitch of the whole Serum. And if you add such a small envelope, it will give a lot of punch as it's pitching down really fast, which is giving the punch effect. For the effects, we put some dimension to it and a flanger with the rate set to 0 Hz. After that, we added a compressor with the multiband mode set on. This one is really important for the Brook style basses, as you really want that squashed sound. Then last but not least, we have a MG Low 6 filter, which is a filter that just cuts out the real harshness of the sound. So if I turn that off, it sounds like this. Bit too nasty if we put it on. The compressor is one of the most important things, as I already told you, if you want to achieve these kind of sounds. Let's turn it off. Then it sounds like this. Really makes it way bigger. Another bass that's used a lot is the saw bass in Future House, and I'm going to make it from scratch right now. First thing you do is set the voices of unison to something bigger than 5, so perhaps 8 will be good. And then we directly turn on the filter and shape envelope 1 to a short shape like. Turn down the octaves like 2 octaves and link envelope 1 to this. Perhaps we need a MG Low 18 or 24 for this one. Don't fully open it up, as we want it to be a bassy kind of sound. The first oscillator is really wide. You can add a second oscillator with 1 voice of unison to add the low mono response as well. Another thing you should do is lower the width in the global section of your first oscillator. This is just because you don't want the bass to get too wide. Then after that we can add a tube distortion. And a compressor. And then once again we link envelope 1 to the filter. That's the basic of a saw base, which is used a lot as well. If you want to check out the futuristic pack, make sure to head over to the link in the description. It got massive support and want to thank you all for that. Let me know if you guys want to see more Future House videos and what type of videos. We're also planning on doing the artist stuff, as I told you about in the previous video. For now, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I see you guys next time.